This is MediaBistro.com's Media Beat. I'm Joe Ciarallo, editor with MediaBistro.com. We're joined today by Lockhart Steele, president and founder of the blog network Curbed. Thanks for joining us.
Hello again.
Hello again. So for some of our readers who may not be completely familiar with some of the history of Curbed and how it came about, we talked a little bit about it in part one, but how has it grown since you were working on it part time?
The best thing about Curbed is somehow it became a job and a full-time job when all I really thought it was going to be was a hobby. Yeah. And it grew. I think that was one of the reasons that the site is successful, is that when we launched it, there wasn't this need for it to produce revenue, or it didn't really need to do anything other than kind of what we wanted it to do, which was talk about what's going on in New York's neighborhoods and what's going on in the real estate scene in a way that's fun and not wonky the way a lot of real estate coverage is. The site was able to grow really organically. People just sort of talked about it by word of mouth. In 2005, a year after we started here in New York, I got an email from two kids who were graduating from an urban planning school in LA. They were like, "Hey, are you going to do Curbed in Los Angeles?" I was like, "I don't know." They're like, "Can we do it?" "All right." And then a year later, the same thing happened in San Francisco. So it was never like there was some grand master plan. It was like somehow the project kind of had a bit of a life of its own. And things would sort of happen, and my job, I think, was sort of to just sort of let them happen, like encourage them to happen. And that's right how it went all the way up till 2007, when I kind of woke up one day and realized, like, hey, I love working at Gawker, which I was the managing editor there for a number of years. But this thing has now gotten big enough that I can't keep doing it in spare time. It's either like take it seriously or find some way to shut it down or change it into something smaller, because it really did have a life of its own.
And you mentioned in an interview I saw recently that Curbed and the network in general gets a lot of traffic from Twitter. How does that, do you know how that would compare to maybe Facebook or other social platforms? Or also, what advice did you give to other online publishers who are sort of tinkering with these social platforms and how to best get their brand, their content out there?
We get more traffic from Twitter than Facebook, but I think that's also because we do a better job promoting our stories on Twitter. One of the things we do is, I like all the editors to actually sort of hand write their tweets. I think some publishers or blog publishers, you can hook up an RSS feed and just pump out every single blog post into a Twitter feed. I like for it to feel a little more real and a little more conversational, and we like to get in conversations on Twitter, with users. That's how we sometimes get some of our best feedback. Facebook we should be doing more with. I mean, that's one of our goals for this year.
And if you were to expand the network or considering expansion plans, do you think you would go into more local versions like you've been doing of the various franchises, or get into new verticals? Or
it's funny, we have this debate all the time. Right now we're pretty set on, we've launched 2 new sites in the last few months. We took our site Eater, which has been local, and did a national version of it. We just did the same thing about a month ago with Racked, our shopping site.
Sure.
So both of those are kind of like, for us, it's a bit of growth. It's it's growing beyond our local roots a little bit and trying for a larger national audience. That being said, I'd also love to get us, for instance, to Chicago, a great neighborhood town. And I think we'll get there this year.
And a lot of publishers obviously having to look beyond the CPM, beyond advertising to maintain their existence. What has Curbed looked at in addition to advertising revenue?
One of the things that's cool about the space that we're in, the real estate space, is that it's a very classified-driven business. So last year we introduced a section of the site called the Curbed Marketplace, and the idea there is it's a place for real estate classified ads, and we charge for them, and lo and behold, people pay for them. And so I like that classified model, especially for local sites, because it lets us balance. And let's be clear, most of our money is in display advertising, and I think some of the reports of the death of CPMs have been overestimated. For niche sites and niche reaching, very, very targeted audiences, advertisers are still willing to pay.
And what percentage of your revenue would you say is from some of the new marketplace products versus?
Well, we're under 20% right now on the new products, but they're growing, and I think they have the potential. For instance, we took that model of the Curbed Marketplace and launched a jobs board for the restaurant industry over on Eater a few months ago. So I think in each of our sites we can kind of see that there could be a classified ad component, and I don't expect it to be 50% of revenue overnight, but it's a nice way to grow an alternate revenue stream that I think is pretty unique to what we do.
And with real estate, you mentioned it is sort of natural to go into that direction. In other verticals, what do you look at when you're thinking, okay, well, do we get into events or what, marketplace listings like you mentioned? What do you look at?
We just think about sort of what is the mission of the company, and the mission of the company, as we see it, is really to sort of cover the cities with the greatest level of intelligence possible. So there are other verticals out there that I would love to be in. Some of them are crowded, and you think like, well, would we really want to go into, I don't know, sports blogging might be a good example. Like, I think we could do probably a really nice local sports blog, but fairly saturated market. You have lots of people blogging about their teams, and you have plenty of other, big sites like Fan House that do it, for every team in the metro area. So it's like, well, even if we like that area, it just might be too much going on for us. So we look for niches. If there's any hint to what we might do next, we look for niches where we can be a little bit weird.
Okay.
Like I think real estate coverage is a good example of something which we make sort of fun in a way when, that's not how most real estate coverage is. So we look for topics that we could maybe bring a little bit of that spin to.
Great. Well, we're here with Lockhart Steele, president and founder of the Curb Network. Part 3, I'm going to get your take on some of the big media issues of the day, paid content, open content, that debate that seems to be never ending. This is MediaBistro.com's Media Beat.